Good evening, my friends at Sanctuary Online this August evening, where we're preparing to have yet another amazing book conversation. Just want to remind everyone tonight, everyone has been here before, so I probably can just skip this slide completely. We know who you are, where you're from, and how you connected to us. So fabulous. I'm looking forward to the conversation tonight. I will tell you though, we have had the most amazing summer series of our Meet the Artist. And if you have not had a chance, or in the upcoming weeks, we have some evenings off. These are some great videos to take a look at. So week one was Edie Disler and around the work she does with PTSD, military folks, and art therapy. And then Jason Hannock was our week two. Ken and Barb went out to his studio, and Ken interviewed Jason. He's an artist who did a lot of painting in Italy. Week three was Shirley King, and if you are from Texas or the area, you know Shirley King. We're really proud of Shirley's. She was on the cover of the Rolling Stone. She was one of the first women to be named Texas Artisan of the Year, and she's just an amazing person and a very good friend of Sanctuary. So we had a wonderful conversation that night, and we also just sang some songs. Actually, we listened to Shirley sing some songs, which is a much better idea than us singing some songs. The next week we did quilting, and Amy McCarter and Pat Ludwig brought quilting, the history of it, their quilts, the conversations of quilts. Many of you wrote in with quilts and sent us pictures. Just again, a wonderful night. And we finished our series with Hamila, who does jewelry mostly based on architecture. And that night it seemed to be it was like a U.S. post-Thanksgiving Black Friday sale, wasn't it, Cheryl? Everyone was trying to go, I want those earrings. No, I want those earrings. I want that necklace. Do you make things special? I mean, it was a big hit, a wonderful night. So again, I encourage any of you, if we've got a week off and you're looking for a sanctuary fix, 5 phenomenal interviews. And yeah, tonight,
I was just going to say about Hamila. Were either of you there? Were you there at Hamila's when I interviewed you? You were okay, yes. Glenda, you would really probably enjoy going back and listening to that, because she bases a lot of stuff on architecture. She lives in an intentional community in Arco Santi in Arizona. Her stories are just really good. Don't you think, Kay?
Yes.
Yeah, so it was interesting. Anyway.
So I can do that by just looking up the YouTube main section. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, she can just look up the YouTube thing, right, Joey, to listen to that.
Yep, sorry. Janice just called in, and I need to help her get on board tonight. So I'm going to quickly just throw this into you tonight. Again, we're about to have a conversation on Shirley MacLaine out on a limb. Yes, and whoever asked that question, the best way to find any of those dates is on our weekly email that we send you. At the very bottom, there'll be a little YouTube like an icon, and it will take you right into our YouTube channel, and then you can see it's very easy to find the different events. Okay,
are you still sending a weekly message?
It should be. If we didn't send one this week, we will talk to Barb about that and get one for you next week. What we'll probably do is put up our whole fall schedule, Glenda. So as you can see right here,
great, thanks.
Tonight is our August book conversation, and then we're actually taking about 3 Tuesday nights off to finish our summer and to let everyone else finish their summer with the holiday weeks as well. And we're going to be working on the redesign of CLM those Tuesday nights, which are great nights for you to go and grab one of the Meet the Artist videos.
Right. Good.
We're going to come back September 21st with full programming. That's when we start every week again. And we're going to come back kind of gentle though with what did you do this summer? Really a conversation around just how do we spend the summer and what's going on in our world, because that changes so quickly. And then we'll have our September book club to be our regular end of month book club. October, we've got an amazing 3-part series on human sexuality in the Bible. And it's going to be actually part 1, 2, and 3. And the first evening, I'm going to interview Ken kind of as to how he became such a passionate expert around this arena of human sexuality. And then the second evening will be kind of the primary teach to the content. And then the third one will be kind of a Q&A, but also community conversation. So we've kind of we've structured this 3-part series a little bit differently. And then of course we've got our October book club. And that's as far as I'm going to take you, because that's as far as you probably need to know right now. It just to remind you, it's going to be an amazing fall, and we're excited to put all the gang back together. So Cheryl, I'm going to stop the share. I'm going to mute myself, and I'm going to get Janice up onto our into the call. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, y'all have a wonderful conversation, and Janice and I will be right there, right back.
Thank you. So we'll probably just kind of hold for a moment and wait for Janice. So how long did it take you, Kay? Did you read the book? Did you get did you finish it a while back, or?
No, I just finished it Monday morning. So
Yeah, that's the same with me. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I had the last, well, we were just busy with a lot of stuff, but the last week I had to discipline myself and read like for 2 or 3 hours a day, 2 or 3 hours a day, 2 or 3 hours a day to get through it. Right. So,
yeah.
But for me, it got a little bit better as it went on, I personally wasn't much interested in the affair thing, but once they got to, once she got into some of her other stuff, it became more interesting for me. Anyway.
While we're waiting, I just had one more little line about a hip replacement. A number of years ago, I did Florida every winter, and I went to the golf course one day and got signed up I went as a single player, and they put me in a group with 3 men, and it was the most joyful game of golf I've ever played in my life. One of the gentlemen was an elderly gentleman. He'd had a hip replacement that went bad. And they didn't know it until it was a real mess, and they had to take the prosthesis out.
Oh,
and then they had to leave it alone so that his whole casing would heal. So his 2 buddies would walk him off the cart over to the green, put the putter in his hand, and he'd do his shot. And they played 18 holes by holding him up.
Oh, you're kidding.
And I'll tell you, it was a
Gosh.
life-changing afternoon for me. It was
Wow.
absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Wow. So he was just kind of on hold until.
Yep. He had one leg that was good, but the other one, he couldn't put any weight on it at all.
How the heck
So,
did he play golf? Did he drive or did he just putt?
Actually, he was coming in from about 100 yards. He was chipping.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't do the full turn,
Right.
but he did everything he possibly could, and it didn't matter. It was all good.
Yeah, sure.
It didn't matter. It was just a joyful afternoon to be part of.
What an amazing thing for his friends to do,
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah. Good
great.
friends.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And we've been playing golf at American Dunes, which is a golf course that is not very far from here. It's a brand new golf course that Joe's brother set up. There you are.
Doing perfectly. All right, you and Janice, we just send you all of our love. We just surround you with
Yes.
our love right now, and
Thank
didn't know if
you.
we wanted to remind you about tonight, but we know that you love this book so much.
Oh,
You
yes.
hung up on me. That we're glad you're here, hon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Where is everybody?
I don't know. We just, I think it's just summer. We had
Yeah.
about 6 or 7 last week or last
Mhm.
month. And I think part of it is the summer. Part of it is, I think there was a couple of people, well, one person for sure that said, I just couldn't get through it, Eric. And it said, it was just too hard for me. So,
You have to be ready for it. You
yeah,
do.
yeah. Anyway,
Just let me tell you a little story about that, because this is kind of important and it goes along with the book. When it was a fluke that I began reading this. It was meant to be, and obviously, and I won't go into that because it's kind of a long story. But as I went through all of her books, beginning with the 2 that came before this, and then I got into this one, I was just shoving in information. I read Edgar Cayce. I read a lot of other stuff besides her stuff at the same time. or similar time. And I couldn't get enough, which she expresses in this book is the way she felt as well when she first started thinking about this and learning about this. And so I got through with this book, and then there's a following book. And if you're interested in this and see how she follows up with it, there's several following books, but the next one is called It's All in the Playing. And that is the book she wrote about going to Machu Picchu. Okay.
Mhm.
And in filming there. Okay. You know, if you go, there is a movie about out on a limb. And if you watch the movie, but the next book, All in the Playing, is about her filming that movie at Machu Picchu. And then the next book after that is called Dancing in the Light. Well, I got through everything up to Dancing in the Light, and I started reading it, and I read a few chapters, and I thought, okay, I was having a lot of trouble for some reason. I was having a lot of trouble reading that book, putting it into my head and understanding it. So I put it down. I usually just keep my books right by my bed. And before long, I wanted to pick it up again, and I went looking for it. I couldn't find it anywhere. I could not find that book anywhere. I looked in all my bookcases. I looked all over my house. I really did. I asked people if I had loaned it to them, all kinds of stuff. And it was like 6 or 8 months before one day I was looking for something else, I think, in a big bookcase that I had. And there was that book. And I took it down and I thought, has this been here all along? And because I had looked over that bookcase many times. And I started reading that book, and it just clicked like it was perfect. And my brain was absorbing it, and it was fine, and I understood it then, not a single problem. And that's one reason, and the reason I began reading this kind of material. Those two are the reasons I followed this information.
Cool.
Because it all happened for me in a way that it was meant to be.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it. It sounds like the book was back on the shelf or somewhere until you were ready for it, and then you discovered it, right? So
I totally believe that.
yeah. Yep. No. Cool. Well, for everyone, thank you all for coming and for reading this book. Cynthia, welcome.
Thank you.
And what did you guys think of this book? It's one of the first questions I always ask is it easy or hard to read, and why?
Well, it started out very easy because, I think we all know the Hollywood star, and that's what it started out as. And, one of my friends who read it and didn't like the deeper part said, every man she met she was suddenly in love with. And every man, it was always straight from the spirit that she got in touch with the love for that particular man. And so that part of it skims along, but I was very moved by this book. I was amazed at how much I was moved by this book. I would never have told you that I would be, but I think it's just a right time in my life to hear more about Emerson and, different authors, and just to see. And when I was a young woman coming out, I had two friends. I met two women in Colorado, and they became kind of like, parental guides for me. They were lesbians, and they told me things like, Cynthia, now you're getting into this life. Let us tell you something. Everyone will tell you love is forever, and with lesbians, forever is always 3 years. So, and they told me more important things, and I actually watched them. I was close with them for about 20 years. But I watched them, and, in those days, there were no ways you could adjudicate things or, work things out in a fair way. So they said to me, I was over there one night when they were doing this, and they said to me, now you just watch tonight, these people are breaking up. And they said, we don't know yet how it is, but most of the time, the house is in one woman's name and the cars and all the appliances are in the other. And they think it's fair to just divide that up that way. And they said, we're realtors, we know that that's not equitable because there's equity in that house and those appliances are worth nothing in the long run. So they were just very, sharp about a lot of things and passed it on to me. But they were great. Peg especially was a great student of Edgar Casey's.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a lot of knowledge about Edgar Casey from them. This was definitely before Darlene, and she and I were together 40 years. So we're talking 50 years ago.
Wow.
But Peggy was a big student of his. So I had a lot of, I can't say I read a lot of it, but I had a lot of understanding through Peggy, which she'll point out to things that were happening to all of us. She went to Virginia Beach and studied some things there of his.
Wow.
So all this has just brought all that back to me. And, having 3 years ago lost Darlene after 40 years, my grief counselor has pushed me to try to talk to Darlene. And Darlene was a very active woman, She was very active in the women's movement. She and 4 friends sued Sears and won 41 million in back pay. And I mean, she did all kinds of stuff with her life. She wrote over 150 children's books. So my answer to my counselor is, no, you don't understand Darlene. She's moved on. I don't know what she's doing, but she's never been idle and she never will be idle. So I've just sort of dismissed that idea of, trying to be in contact with her. But this book, I mean, it kind of got me thinking that, maybe that I could get in contact with her.
Yeah, there you go.
So I really, I would reread passages that, where Shirley MacLaine was being lectured by somebody. I mean, I don't think she personally, she was nice to share with us as she was learning, let me put it this way, but I don't think she particularly had an understanding of as much of it as she would like to, but she was grappling with it, which was fun to read. So I reread some of those passages, though, by some of those other people that had really studied long time, that guy who owned the bookstore. And, it just was really good for me to read that. And I don't buy books anymore. Everything's on my Kindle, but it will be there now for me to go back to.
Sure.
And I will be going back to it. There's no question.
Yeah.
So,
so it kind of reconnected you with stuff that you had probably almost forgotten about.
oh,
from,
totally.
a long time ago. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
And what I did like, though, is the idea of, well, I love the way they work the Bible into most of their understandings.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Ann and Peg did, by the way. They, after I found MCC and I've been there for so many years, they were nice about it, but they said, well, we haven't never left Christianity. And I used to think, oh yes, you really have, but they hadn't. Now I see back that they hadn't. And so it was just that part I really liked, because it was so interesting the way it was all connected in.
Yeah. Well, what about Glenda or Kay? What did you think about this book, or about reading it, or any other insights like that, general insights or whatever, before we get into anything specific?
Well, I've had the book since 1984, and I actually thought that I had read it. But as I was parts of it, I still think that, yeah, I did read it, or else some of the things that are in that one are mentioned in other books, because I have 11 of her books. But
Wow.
but I was with you in terms of the beginning of it, was a little harder for me to just keep reading great quantities at a time. But as it got towards the end of it, because I had some of those people that are things that articles and so forth that she mentions are things that I've either heard of or I had read some about myself. So it was somewhat familiar, but it was just refreshing to read it again. So.
Oh, cool. Glenda?
Yeah, I'm still not quite sure where I am with the book. I think, let me just babble for a couple minutes. My best friend's daughter just had twins on
Oh.
Thursday,
Well,
and difficult to get pregnant. They've been working on this for a while. She's got a 4-year-old, and my dear friend has moved into their home for 3 weeks to help with the 4-year-old. So the whole time I'm reading this book, I'm totally aware that there are 2 brand new little beings about to enter our atmosphere. And I started thinking about from whence they've come,
yeah.
Mhm.
and the whole notion of reincarnation and the whole notion of nurture versus nature. And so, and I told Jacqueline this yesterday on the phone, that they've been a big part of my journey through this book this week. So that was one thing that happened to me. One of the other things that I found to be particularly joyful in reading the book. As you guys know, I'm an avid nature lover.
Mhm.
And the journeys that she took us on in the old Plymouth up the side of the mountain, and the higher they got, the better it got. I just wanted to be so much in the backseat of that car.
Yeah.
And it just kept getting better and better and better. So that whole section was just a really wonderful experience for me to read the fine detail of the people and the women with no teeth and her babies and the hot milk and the whole thing that kind of went into that part of the book. And then the third thing that struck me was, once again, this is new for me. This is new since the MCC world has become part of my life. The notion that the Bible was politically rewritten over and over and over again. This is not something that I had any knowledge of 10 years ago or 5 years ago. So the notion that it is now not even what it is, but it is some gyration of some political ploy, is a very dark part for me of the book. And I believe it, but I just wish I didn't know it. It would just be so much better if I didn't know all that stuff. So as I said, it's taking me a lot of different places. As far as the actual belief system that's incorporated into her storytelling, I have to say there were times when I'm thinking, am I reading some kind of science fiction here? I mean,
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, there's lots and lots and lots of stories that get told just like this, but not about people that have seen UFOs, really. They've all been science fiction kind of stories.
Yeah.
So I was constantly having to question in my own mind, okay, is this part real, or is this just an exaggeration of something? And then when I got to the end, I found the end of it was just so disappointing. This notion that she went off and spoke with her friend Bella, it went nowhere for me. It was like nothing. It was just like falling off the end of an unfinished page.
Mhm.
And so I really, to finish it off that way, did not give me any satisfaction in terms of closure.
Yeah. And it did, it just kind of stopped, didn't it?
It was awful.
But that was her, to me, when she was having that conversation with Bella, she was expressing what she had actually learned. So she was now speaking like some of these people that had been her teachers, and so that was what I got from it, was now she can express these same things and in her own words and so on and so forth. But I was taken back by it too, is all of a sudden I turned the page and I said, well, that was it. I mean, I didn't expect it to end like that, but yeah, that was the end of where she wanted to be. The amazing thing is, Kay, you said you got this book in 84 or something. I mean, it was written, I mean, she published it in 83 or something,
Right. Yeah.
New when you
Well, I mean, that it's a day or two ago, and so for me, it's been a while. I mean,
When you picked it up.
yeah. So that's why, I mean, the part about the guy in UK, Jerry, that's the part that I seem to remember, but the rest of it also seems like things that I mean, part of it is that I, had read some of the same people that she was referring to, or that people were referring her to. So,
Yeah. So it was familiar to you, especially if you have, what, 11 of her books or something like
Yeah,
that?
well,
Yeah.
how would you tell us a little bit more about the rest of her books? What are they like? Are they all like this or?
well, I haven't read them all.
Oh,
Janice told us a little bit about it before you came on,
oh,
Cynthia.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I actually heard her speak. I have the book, Saging While Aging. When that book came out, she was here in Seattle, and I actually got to hear her talk about that, and that she actually autographed that book. But I don't believe that I've actually read that book. But I think, I mean, I had the earlier ones that Janice referred to, and I'm not sure whether or not I've read. That was the part I was so sure at the beginning that I had read this one, and it was like, well, obviously there's a piece that I'm remembering that's not in this book, so at least I read one other book, but I
Right.
don't remember which ones.
Yeah. So these belief systems, one of the things that was fascinating to me is I went through it too, and I said, okay, she's talking about reincarnation, she's talking about channeling, she's talking about UFOs, she's talking about extraterrestrials, she's talking about out-of-body experiences.
Right.
Some of these things, I mean, I'm like, oh yeah, I got that, I can do that, I've been there, I've done that, I've experienced it, I've heard of somebody or whatever. And then some of the things I was like, whoa, that's a little bit much. But with the UFOs, you didn't hear hardly anything about that, but just recently, right? There's been a lot of stuff in the news about that. And it's kind of like, wow, that was kind of timely to hear that. But when she was going through this in this book, it was in the 60s. This stuff was so off the wall and bizarre back then that no wonder she was, like so skeptical, and all the people she was talking to were so skeptical. Nowadays, I mean, it's not so out there.
Far out, no.
Talking about, it's more accepted. There's a lot of more people that have gone through some of this stuff, right? So
I think too, the whole notion that it's possible for even very close-minded people to become more open-minded was a good thread through that whole story. I've never had an issue with that because I was thrown into situations as a younger person that caused me to rethink some things. Some of them small and some of them not so small. And but I have siblings that would just they wouldn't open the book just in case they might be changed.
Right.
God forbid anything should change where they currently are in their world. And that will be the case forever. I think we've all got those siblings.
Yes.
But for myself, the whole notion of reincarnation, I have no reason to believe anything other than what she wrote. Who am I to question things that are so much bigger than any one of us?
Yeah.
Now the discussions and the experiences with David, was that his name was David up in the mountain? Yeah. I believe that writing came almost directly from her recording machine. Because it was in such fine detail.
Yeah.
The dialogue was he said, she said, he said, she said.
Right.
And that had to be almost verbatim of the journey with him.
Yeah.
And she spoke so often about having to buy batteries for her tape recorder.
And can't you just see that little tape recorder? It's one of those with the little tapes that goes around.
Yeah.
I can hear it. Yeah. Whee!
Oh my gosh. Yeah, have you guys, any of you ever experienced any kind of a deja vu type of thing where you're like, oh yeah, been there, done there, and it makes you think, yeah, but you know, it gives credence to the whole thing of reincarnation just because of that kind of thing, huh?
Can I tell you a story?
Sure.
Mhm.
When I was a very young teenager, I have a vivid memory of this. I was asleep, I was in bed, I was asleep, I was having a dream. And when I woke up in the morning, the dream was perfectly vivid to me. I am running away from something in the forest. And I'm running through a forest that would be kind of like aspens. So you can see through the
Mhm.
trees. It's not like a cedar forest kind of thing. And I'm a male. I'm wearing a loincloth and I'm hit in the back with an arrow.
Mm.
And I can see myself going up against the tree. Now, in today's world, August of 2021, I have a lump on my back where that arrow went in.
Wow.
And don't ask me to explain those two, but they're real.
No, yeah. Exactly.
So, who knows?
Well, right in the middle of reading the book, and by the way, we just finished a thunderstorm. I don't know if you heard it, but right in the middle of the book, while I'm reading it, I sit up on a little bit of a hill. I'm in town, but we built up so we could have a basement. And behind me is all forest. Anyway, we had a terrible thunderstorm and my power went out for 2 days. And in the middle of that, 2 of the giant trees in my backyard were hit by lightning and fell to the ground.
Wow.
So I'm reading this book and I'm just mind boggled. First of all, I started, I felt I was prepared. I had my good flashlight, etc. But then I finally remembered that I had power packs set aside to keep my cell phone charged so I would never lose contact. Took me a while to figure that out by about the 8th hour. Then the power came on for 20 minutes and then it was out for another 24, 28 hours. So, but it was interesting to be reading that book at that time because it was like, talk about connecting to nature. It was like, oh, we think we're so in charge. Right now, I'm not in charge of anything. And things are happening all around me. And in some ways, they're beautiful and natural. But in other ways, it's like a good example of how this whole mystical system is just moving along. And we're just a big,
Cynthia, where are you, Cynthia?
Michigan. I'm 2 blocks from Lake Michigan on the southern part. I'm in 2 miles from me, you would have the border to Indiana. So I'm literally on the bottom. Michigan's like this and I'm on the bottom over here.
Yeah.
So on the way to Chicago. So and we do get storms, but certainly not. I mean, I've lost some limbs before, but to have 2 trees fall was very unusual. But it was a bad storm. Well, to take out all that power, there were 1,600 homes without power.
Wow.
So it was and that's another thing, you learn how ineffective the police are in a small town. My town's 2,300 people. My friends one called from Chicago to see about me and asked for a wellness check, and they said, oh no, we're not even calling anybody. There's too many problems here. We're not hardly even taking calls. Just call 911 and you'll be connected to the state police. They just threw up their hands like, it was like, it's just too much for us to cope. So, so I learned something. I told her later, I said, in the future, call Berrien County Police. They're nearby. They're not like the state police and hard to get. So anyway, but the Berrien County guy did come here. He was called by the state to come and check on me and was very, very helpful in that he said he would come by again. And that's when the power went on for 20 minutes. So we all thought I was home free, but I wasn't. So it was a good lesson though, in that we're quite interdependent with one another, and also that the world is operating on many levels and we're just on one tiny level of it.
Sure. We don't tend to, most people don't tend to seek out that spiritual side of ourselves as deeply as is expressed in here. And I thought that was quite interesting, even when she was talking about, I think she said it was a dream, but she said it wasn't really a dream, kind of like what you were talking about when something really happened, where she was connected by a cord to her body, but pulled towards the light. And you've read stories about this kind of stuff where people, and their near death experiences, or this kind of experience, out of body experience, where you're pulled this way, but somehow you're not supposed to go quite all that way yet, and so you come back to your body. But the more she went up towards it, the more connected she felt, the more she felt at one with everything, as if everything was one. Was this part of what the book is about, right? Is like, we're all one, it's all one, God is love, and we're all part of that slice of God type of, thing. So, that was, I don't know, that a lot of the stuff in here for me was not unfamiliar as well. And so it was kind of interesting. And I've always thought it was very interesting the way, it doesn't matter what scriptural thing you read or what, the almost all of them, you can find the same basic tenets over and over and over again. And, when they talked about them being, oh, these are new age, this has nothing to do with the Bible, you shouldn't go, do this, you should, well, when you read it, it's like, well, the Bible says the same thing,
Right.
Just a matter of your interpretation of it, So, interesting.
Let
ahead.
me just answer that question. Since I got involved in studying all this back in early 80s, and so I had already read a bit. By the time I found out about her writings, I didn't know anything about her writings until someone told me about them. Because we were talking about Edgar Casey and some other books that I had read, and they suggested, maybe that I would be interested in Shirley's books. So I was on a quest at the time, really, because I was experiencing a lot of, is this meant to happen kind of things. I did some dream work as well. And so, it was all kind of mixed up, but I don't remember which one of you said this, Cynthia or Glenda, but or maybe Kate, but everything had to make sense, having to do, in connection with my Christianity.
Yes,
It just
that was me.
did. Everything, I needed it all to blend together and
Right.
make sense. And I think because Shirley writes so, it's pretty easy to read her stuff. And it's kind of storyline. It's not just telling this happened, this is true, and that's true. She is pretty much asking the questions, could this be true? So I wasn't put off by it at all when I first started reading it. And of course, like I said, I just started reading everything she wrote. And so, yes, I did have later on, in the middle to late 80s, I had a relationship with a woman who had been my childhood friend, actually. She was 3 years older than me. And so I was about 11 when I actually met her. And we were very, very close. And then we kind of, and then my life happened and her life happened. And we weren't that close for a while. And then we got back together as good friends. And then, we kind of waned off again. You know how sometimes your friendships do that.
Yep.
Well, by the middle part of the 80s, she came back into my life, and I began reading to her. She was blind, and then we found that we did have a love relationship, and that's when I became very confused because I was married and had 2 children at the time. And so all of this kind of began to make so much sense to me. And she and I actually had an experience together. And I truly believe we were reliving a life we had lived in the past. And the reason I decided that's what was going on is because I only saw her once a week, and I would go to her and I would read books, different books, some of Shirley's, and and we would talk about stuff. And I would say, well, it occurred to me this week that this, or it came to me that this, and she would say, yeah, I was thinking the same thing, and blah blah blah. And she would do the same thing. Like she would say something like that to me, and I would go, I wouldn't even tell her. I'd just say, oh my God, in my own head, I thought the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. And the story panned out. We didn't get, all of it, but the basic story was we were married in that lifetime. She was a male and I was a female. And it was a time of the Civil War. And ever since I've been a little child, I've been extremely interested in that period of history. And so that came up, and it turned out that that I died during that relationship at a fairly early age. We did have a child. There were incidences. He was a spy, basically, a runner for the North, but he was a spy for the North, but he was pretending to be with the South, and he was getting messages and sending them back and forth and so forth, trying to help the North. And I know the house we lived in. I know where we lived. And I even went and checked it out. And there was a house. There were houses in that area which are now underwater because they had raised the water. This was in Arlington, Virginia. And I was there and I checked it out, and it told, I couldn't figure out why I couldn't find the house. And then I went into a museum, and it explained that the 3 blocks that was closest to the water had been had gone underwater because of the way they, I don't know, redid the water line or whatever in there. And so it was a purposeful thing that they did. And I read this in the museum. And I thought, for heaven's sake, that explains why I couldn't find the exact house, but I could tell you almost what block it was. And it was fascinating and almost scary. I mean, it was really pretty scary, honestly. And so that was one thing that convinced me. There was another lifetime where we did have the same person I did have a relationship with. The only thing that came to me and her was that they were buried. She was dying or died, and she was buried in like a tomb. So this was, I don't even know when, so long ago. And I remembered there were some ceremonies that we were going through. Not like a funeral of today, but very different, but kind of the same idea. These ceremonies. There was something about a shroud that I had to put over her head or his head. And I haven't had a recurrence of a lifetime where I was a male, but I'm convinced I have been probably in the past.
Well, that's, I mean, so you've really delved into this and you understand that you've had some past experiences and so on. So that's interesting.
Absolutely. I know that sound makes me, I'm like Shirley, you know, it makes me sound kind of crazy.
No, it doesn't. But I mean, even the thing that you were talking about, Glenda, about the two twins, I mean, you know, you think about, well, where did they come from? What was their past, you know, before they were born and stuff. And I don't know, there was a story in one of the books that I read, I can't even remember what book it's from now, but where the parents brought home a new baby, right? He's in the crib in there, and their 2 or 3-year-old daughter, I think 3-year-old daughter, says, I need to go talk to him. I need to go talk to him by myself. And they're like very afraid of that, but they went ahead and set up one of those baby monitors. Have you guys know this story?
No.
Set up one of those baby monitors so that they could hear what happened in case, you know, there was some issue or something. So she goes in there and she says, I forget what the little boy's name is. So she says, please tell me about God. I've almost forgotten, you know, and you just, you know, wonder, because we have that connection, right? But then when we grow up in this world, it
dissipates, yeah.
we forget, you know, and that part of what she's talking about in here in this book, and over again, it's like, you know, you have this knowledge of being, what does it say? Each individual already knows the divine truth. They've simply complicated it and forgotten that they know, you know, things like, let's see, what is another one here? Oh, you know, that your self-knowledge, and that you can't just learn the truth. You have to experience it and that sort of thing. And so, you know, I don't know, there's just some different things in there like that. Do you guys have any things, you know God, you don't believe in God, you know God, belief implies acceptance of something unknown. You have simply forgotten that you already know. You know, I don't know. It's just some things like that jump in there, Joby. I knew you wouldn't be able to resist.
I tried so hard. I've been pretty good, I think. And I've loved your conversations. But there's a book, it's called The 10 Rules of Being Human, that I often refer to when I'm teaching. I mean, I do a lot of online teaching, and I do because it's a wonderful book about 10 rules of being human. But the 10th rule is my favorite, and it says, you will forget all of this at birth. And just that concept of you will forget it at birth, which means it's changed me as a teacher per se, as to be a person who trusts people that they have all the answers that they need inside them. My job is to remind them, right, of what they already know. It's not to teach them anything.
Remember. Yeah, help them remember. Yeah.
And you know, it's very rare that I teach a class that doesn't come up somewhere. It's like, I'm not teaching anything that you are going to learn. It's going to, you know, it's the fact that you already have what you know. You already know what you need to know, but you have to go find it, you know, and reclaim it. You have to remember. And a million years ago in MCC, some communion training, they said the word remember, because we talk about remembering the meal, remembering the story. And remember is the opposite of dismember. Dismember is to take apart, and to remember is to put back together.
Yes. Yeah.
And that just says, I think it's gentled me in the role of being a teacher, because it helps me be very aware that I'm not teaching anybody anything. I'm just helping them to access and to remember, to put things back together that they knew at one time. You know, and the world breaks us in so many ways, like the conversations you guys have been having tonight. But to come from that wholeness and that God self, to journey as a human on this planet and be kind of bumped and bruised, but that healing back into wholeness that MCC often talks about too doesn't mean you're not dying. It means you're transitioning back into that wholeness from which you came. You're just leaving this part of the journey. So, yeah. Anyway, yes, I couldn't stop, Cheryl. So there, I was confident that you would be in here sometime.
Cheryl, is it okay if I just comment with Janice for a second?
Absolutely.
Janice, I totally enjoyed your two recollections.
Mhm.
But I was fascinated that the first of the two didn't happen in your land of origin. So the second one did, because you were talking shrouds and so on. But to put the first story in Arlington, I mean, I would have thought it would have been in Europe or the UK or wherever your ancestors were from. And to me, that's pretty fresh stuff.
Yeah.
Civil
Yeah.
War time frame, yeah.
That's only, I don't know how many years ago, but that's not very far.
Mhm.
About 200, a little over.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when I think about reincarnation, I think about generations ago kind of thing.
Mm.
Interesting stuff.
Mm.
Thank you for telling us that.
Well, in my readings, different things, reincarnation can happen the day after you die. I mean, and I don't remember if Shirley ever said that, but somebody that I read did. According to, I don't know, it can happen at any time. That doesn't seem plausible, but you know, I guess she
Well-
mentioned in there about the spirit guides.
Right.
Did y'all get the part about the spirit guides? There's a book called The Spirit Guide, the Spirit Guide, or Guides. And that's another very fascinating book, explains a lot about reincarnation, about how it can happen and why it happens and how you're guided. She mentioned it a little, but she didn't go into it. And I think in some of her later writings, she does talk a lot more about it. But I've read, like I said, other books about that as well.
She did, Janice, excuse me, talk about when you're talking about reincarnation could happen the next day, that our souls they have their own free will. They get to do what they want. They release the body when they're ready to release the body. So they can jump into another body if they're ready to jump in, or they can just, hang out in the energy force until they're, ready.
Until they and their spirit guides, according to I've read, have defined what it is they're going to come back for.
Mhm.
Usually there's a plan of what you need to learn for this lifetime. And there may be multiple things that you're coming back to learn. Or on the other hand, you may be coming back for someone else's ability to learn.
Yeah.
And my daughter is a teacher for special ed. And we talked about this quite a bit last week when she was here helping me with my grief. And she's convinced, as well as I, and again, it's something I have encountered in some of my readings, about people whose souls come back in that form so that it's to help others. It's to help others understand or become compassionate or learn compassion or learn patience or learn some of these huge concepts that we need to learn. And in Edgar Cayce makes it very clear that you're coming back, each time you learn more, you're getting closer to the God source. And the whole idea is to eventually get to the God source. I mean, totally, and not have to come back. She mentioned that a little bit here, and she does a lot more as she writes other books. But Casey said a lot about that, and so each time you're getting closer and closer. But your life, according to this philosophy, is not only for your own self to learn, but to help others. learn as well. And your encounters of people that you encounter and people that come into your life is no accident. Roberta and I met when I was 12 years old. I was going into 7th grade, and she was my junior high school counselor in 7th grade. The difference in our age was 25 years, exactly to the day. At that time, I stayed for 2.5 years in the same school, and every single morning I was in her office because she would have little jobs for me to do and so forth. And so we got to be very close. Her children, her son is 6 months older than I am, and her daughter is 9 months younger than I am. So I'm right in the middle of them. And when I discovered that I was interested in, I had fallen in love with this blind woman who had been in my past as well, almost at the same time of my life. I didn't have anybody to tell, I didn't have anybody to talk to. I lived in Georgetown, Texas, the most conservative place on earth, I thought. And so there was nobody that, not even my closest friends, that I could really say anything to. And I couldn't share any of this information that I was getting all the time in the books. So I got to thinking about, it just came to my mind. Her name kept coming to my mind. Roberta Cummings, Roberta Cummings, Roberta Cummings. And why don't you find Roberta? So I began to look for her, and I didn't have a lot of connection with people that knew her, that also I knew. It turned out it took about a year for me to find her, but I pursued it because it just it was so on my mind, and I just felt like she would know, she would understand. At that time, I had no idea that she was a lesbian at all. She had never revealed that to me. I never knew. And my husband was actually the one who said, why don't you call, and this was a coworker of hers that worked in the same school as a counselor, and he might know where she is. And so I did. And this man happened to be the father of my husband's best friend in high school. Okay. So there's all these connections that are rolling and rolling and rolling together. And he was not there. He was actually on a fishing trip in Alaska or something, and was going to be gone another 3 months. So I waited another 3 months. Finally, I called him. He said, you might call or write teacher's retirement, because she probably is a member. And they will they may not tell you that she is a member, but they will somehow make a connection for you. I did that, and that's exactly how I found her. The next thing I knew, after I had written this letter to teacher's retirement, saying that I was looking for her, and I'd been one of her former students, next thing I knew, she was on the phone to me. We went for 2 years with me not telling her the whole story, but the turmoil was continuing in my life. And we went for 2 years, and finally I was compelled to tell her. Again, I had no idea what her lifestyle was. And so one morning we met. She came back she lived in Hawaii. She came back about every 6 months to visit friends and family. So we agreed that the next time she came back, we would meet, and we did. And I was able to tell her at a particular time when we got together. And during that time, you know how when you live far away from your friends and family and you come back, everybody has kind of their time period, you know, time frame. And so I had my time frame, and that was breakfast on a certain day. And after that, I heard back from her. I got a card from her. She called me once while she was still here and said, I'm not going to be with, I thought I was going to be with my grandson at this time, but I have that time free. Would you like to get together again? I just thought maybe she thought I was really about to kill myself or something, because she was giving me so much attention. And she even called me just before she got on the plane to go back to Hawaii. So I found that very odd. But about 3 or 4 days later, after she got home, she called me from Hawaii, and she told me she had fallen in love with me, but she did not want to be a burden, a part, you know. She just wanted me to know that she was there for me if I needed her, whatever. And our relationship started then. I realized almost immediately that my adoration for her was so easily morphed into a love relationship. And it wasn't long before that was declared between us. And we were together 32 years.
Wow.
So, and it was, there couldn't have been anything more meant to be.
Mm.
Never. As odd as our relationship was, being 25 years difference in our ages, being all of that. So I firmly believe, because it's happened to me over and over, that my life is a path and I'm on it, and I really tune in to those signs and signals that I get. And it always seems to pan out, because I've had so many of them. I mean, that's just one, a fairly big one, but one in my life.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Especially right now. Thank you for sharing with us about you and Roberta.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you. The real blessing.
She was
Wow.
a real, she was a
I-
total
Cheryl, I don't think there's anything more to say tonight.
Yeah, I don't need, I know. I mean, well, and plus
We've been to the pinnacle.
we've been to the pinnacle, and we are over time. Unless you guys want to choose another book for next month.
Don't we have one?
No, but I was wondering, I have, from the last time when we did all this, there were a couple, I was thinking we should do something kind of light this time.
Yeah, this is pretty.
There's a couple that seemed like they were kind of light. One is called The Spoon Stealer by Leslie Kruby, I think her name is. And it says it's humorous, a lot of family secret stuff. And she leaves her farm in Nova Scotia when she's a kid and moves to London, and then later inherits the farm and has to go back. But it's supposed to be, you know, it sounds like it'd be a relatively light reading with even a little bit of substance. There's another one called Firefly Lane, you guys might have heard of, by Kristen Hanna, who we've read some of her books already, or we read, I think the last one we read, This Tender Land, is by her, I think. But hers, it's about, she says, if you've ever drank Boone's Farm and listened to ABBA or Fleetwood Mac, this is kind of a coming of age story about two girls that are friends, and they were friends at the beginning, you know, when they're young, and they're friends for 30 years, and it's kind of their story. So those were two that I thought of that were kind of light. The other ones that we had listed there were a little more, you know, a little heavier. Let's put it that way.
Cheryl, that last one, the previous Kristen Hanna book was called The Four Winds.
Oh, The Four Winds. Okay, sorry. All right.
Just if that,
And everybody seemed to say that this other one, the Firefly or whatever that was. What's that one?
Firefly Lane.
Yeah, that one by Kristen Hanna. Everybody said that one was a lot better than
The Four Winds.
Mhm.
Okay.
They did, didn't they, in the conversation? So
Yeah.
you might be a way to reinvigorate the group in the fall, Cheryl.
Okay.
Mhm.
You guys want to try and go with that book? Is that-
Sure.
Sure.
And the name of it again?
It's called Firefly Lane.
Firefly Lane.
Yeah, by Kristen Hanna. And it's really just about two young girls and kind of a coming of age, but growing up together and 30 years, in friendship. So, That's-
That might be real cool.
yeah. You guys good with that?
Okay, yeah,
We didn't even have to vote. Look, show,
Yeah. I'm okay.
Go ahead, Janice.
I was just saying I'm okay with that. I vote for
So-
that.
Okay.
Cheryl, I just have one more short one if, and Cynthia, if you want to go ahead, that's okay. I don't mind.
No, I don't need anything.
Okay.
I was just
Um,
voting.
Okay. I just need to share this, and this goes back 22 years. The night my mom died.
Mhm.
And the whole family is in the room when she passes. And we're all still in the hospital, and then they've got like a family gathering room that we all go into, and so on and so forth and so on. Ultimately, everybody sort of goes home. Now, I don't live there anymore, so I'm going back to my son's home. So I'm not in a big hurry. I went back into the room just one last time, just the two of us,
Mm.
and she was gone. And I didn't quite know what to do with that. Her body was there, but the room was empty. And it was such a physical sensation. I'll never forget it. And I spoke about it within a day to a close friend, because there was a noticeable shifting. And I remember saying then, it was like her spirit had left the room.
Mhm.
And I've always remembered that. I mean, it was a very poignant moment in my life 22 years ago. But it kind of fits with the whole notion of our conversation here tonight.
Mhm.
And don't think for a moment we all know what's out there, because we don't.
Right.
And yeah, I just wanted to share that.
Wow, that's awesome. That's really, when you can feel how palpable it is to
Yeah.
feel, the difference in the room and the energy. It's an energy thing, right?
That's exactly what it was. Yep.
Yeah.
And I had just the opposite experience. My mother died in the night suddenly. Nothing was expected. It was just, you can't imagine how horrible it was. And she was younger than I am now, but when I would go up to her house, and this bothered me for a while, and then my cousins came from out west a year later and said, "Oh my gosh, Aunt Wilda's here." In other words, she went so fast. People later told me a part of her didn't let go. I mean, you could feel that spirit. Honestly, it sounds strange, but in that particular house, and my sister still lives there, it's gone now. But I'm talking about 1990 and 30 years ago. And the spirit, she didn't want to leave us. They said she knew this was too fast. She's a part of her is still here. And then just slowly it dissipated and went away.
Wow.
So
Wow.
Like you were talking about, Janice, that we're there, whether we're in spirit form or bodily form, to not only work ourselves through our own stuff, but to help other people. What you're talking about.
And sometimes, from what I have read and what I believe, we do that even after death.
Yeah.
So that may be what Cynthia's,
yeah.
what happened with Cynthia's mom.
it was so felt. It was just amazing.
Yeah.
Let me tell y'all one more book that if you are interested, there's a book I am currently reading, and this is the first one of this nature that I've read, but it's called Misreading Scripture with Western Eyes. It's by a man by the name of E. Randolph Richard and Brandon something. I can't quite see it. Somebody, but anyway, it's very interesting, extremely dry, but lots and lots of facts and lots of, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way, you know, kind of awareness. It just, he tells, he's obviously a scholar, and he tells how a certain thing would be viewed in the Bible, but if you were a Westerner, or if you lived in the East or the Middle East, or the, you know, from whatever your background is, and whatever, you know, how words affect you. I mean, it's as simple as we call cookies cookies, and in Britain they call them biscuits. You know, it's that kind of thing. And that's why so much misinterpretation has occurred.
Sure.
So it's a very interesting book. It's called Misreading Scripture with Western Eyes. And I'm about to finish it. It has come along.
Mhm.
Cool. Well, y'all, it's been delightful. Thank you, Janice, for recommending that book.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you for sharing so many of your experiences. Thank you all for sharing your experiences and your thoughts about this. I've actually been, I didn't think that this time would be as easy as it has been, but it was quite easy and enjoyable with you all. So thank you.
And thank you all for your prayers and your thoughts. I have, as you might know, with what I believe, I've done a lot of thinking, and I'm having to apply a lot of it when, you know, all of a sudden you go, oh, if I believe that, I guess I have to apply it in some way. And it makes sense to me, really.
That's
It will be a
beautiful.
help for you as well, Janice.
Yes, it
Yeah,
has.
that's what I was going to say. It's got to be helpful.
Yeah, good.
Well, thank y'all very much.
Good
Love
night,
you all.
everybody.
Good
Good night, everybody.
Finish
Thank you all.
August safe wherever you are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting me in, Joe.
Absolutely, Janice. I'm so happy you called us. We were trying to reach you by email and by whatever. So
I
and
saw
now you know
your
how to get in
email,
without
Cheryl.
us.
Yeah, I saw your
Oh, good.
email and I thought, how do I get into this? I need to-
But now you know, right?
I do.
Zoom,
Thank you for
join.
showing
Thanks.
me. Nobody had
Absolutely.
ever shown me that before. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Love you all.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.